I'd like to officially welcome you on behalf of StockYardsBank's officers and board of directors. Our first speaker today is Warren Beeler, Executive Director, Governor's Office of Agricultural Policy. But most importantly, he is a great, knowledgeable guy, and just delighted to have Warren join us today. Thank you, Warren.
Thank you, Kathy. The reason she is such a silver-tongued apple is because she was port queen in 1980. Really appreciate it. She's from a wonderful family in Union County. Go back. I'm an old hog farmer from Caneyville, Kentucky. Anybody know where Caneyville is? We got a four-way stop. And nobody stops it because we all know where we're going. The other night I came in real late. There was three of us at the four-way stop. I like to have never got through there. You know what I'm talking about. I always ask this time of year is such special for Kentucky. I always ask, do we have any college basketball fans in the room? You know, we just eat it, sleep it. I think they vaccinate us with something when we're little, that we just love basketball. Well, it will get you in trouble, our passion. About 4 years ago, I was at the Dairy Nationals over here at the fairgrounds, and I walk in, and the Ireshire Queen is 6'4". I walked right up to her, I looked her right in the eye. I said, "You play basketball?" Couldn't help it. She looked down on my bald head. She said, "Yes, sir, I do." She said, "You play miniature golf?" I said, "I do, yeah." It's such a pleasure to be here, and I thanks Kathy and Stockyard Bank and folks for inviting me. We have some of the most exciting times in agriculture we've had in years and years and years, with a crop that we used to raise 90% of back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. When it came down to it, it was absolutely deal. Then we threw it away, brought it back during World War II, started making rope out of it. Then we threw it away again. But it's here this time. It looks like to stay, and it's really interesting. I'll give you a little bit about it. Commissioner Comer, now Congressman Comer, was the guy that fought the battle in the beginning. And I mean, it was a battle to get started because everybody associated hemp with marijuana and the whole deal, and we're such a conservative state. It'd been battled 2 or 3 times, it didn't go anywhere. He got it going, and then Commissioner Ryan Quarles, that's basically, we were the first state to basically oversee our own program. Matter of fact, the federal program is going to be duplicate of ours as he gives it to Secretary Perdue. So, save your questions. Questions will be better than the talk, and I'll try to get this thing. Here's the problem we've got. I think the reason they threw hemp away a bunch of years ago is because it's such a versatile crop. I think the people who threw it away were the cotton legislators and the forestry legislators because it was such a threat to those two industries, and because it was a member of this cannabis family. They could throw it away. In 1937 Marijuana Act pitched it away. They are both cannabis family. Hemp has only 0.3% or less THC, stuff that makes you high when you smoke marijuana. Bad marijuana starts at 10%. So you can see, it's just a crop to us. We're not interested in the marijuana side. We're just interested in what we can do with hemp. Here's what we've done. We passed Senate Bill 50. Senate Bill 50 exempted us from the Hemp Substance Abuse Act in 1970. And then as a result of that, then basically we were able to put in infrastructure to do pilot projects. Research and education. Every time we looked at one, we said, what are we going to learn? Has this guy got the ability to grow the stuff? Has he got land? Has he got equipment? That kind of stuff. We issued a license out of the Kentucky Department of Agriculture. Amazing. We GPS it. Where's it at? Tell the state police. If it's not that GPS, you cut it down. Plain and simple. So we got control. We test it and inspect it. In other words, if it's not at that 0.3 or less, when you harvest it, then it gets burnt just like with marijuana, even if it's only 0.5, it gets burnt. We have total control of the program. That's how we designed it. The Farm Bill before this last Farm Bill allowed us to go after, as a result of that exemption, allowed us to do these pilot projects. Only research and education, and didn't allow us to sell hemp. We didn't think we were going to be able to sell it. We thought we were just going to be able to raise it and do research for a while, but then we got that approved. The Farm Bill, this last one, last December, basically legalized hemp. That doesn't mean you just go ahead and grow it like corn and soybeans or anything else. That's not the case at all. But it freed it up, allowed it to go interstate, travel through states. I guess you heard about the old boy got stopped in Oklahoma or somewhere, and and evidently it wasn't him. And so I think he's still in Oklahoma. Three products we get out of hemp: seed, fiber, and CBD. The only controversial one of the bunch is the CBD, and because it has a little bit of THC in it. Plain and simple, the seed and fiber part do not. So it's interesting. We'll get into the details a little bit. Here's the products we get from a seed. We get medications. We get health foods. All the health snack food companies, health food companies out of California have been here for 4 or 5 years now, trying to set up shop. Cosmetics, lotions, even some biofuels and stuff. What's really interesting about the seed is we're doing some work through the universities feeding it to livestock. We've got a little project where we're feeding it to layers, and the omega-3s in the eggs are off the charts. Just amazing what we might not know about hemp that might have real opportunity. The seed thing it's got a shot. The fiber deal, paper, textiles, carpet, any kind of construction, we use like fiberglass and concrete. You can make chipboard, all kinds of things. The guy gave me a piece in Murray the day before yesterday that was just almost like a tabletop, beautiful. We got Amanda out of Cynthiana talking to Toyota about making dashboards and side panels. That's a big market. That's a huge market. And then we used it for bedding in cattle, and then turned around and used the bedding back in a bioenergy burner to generate energy for the horse facility at Murray State. The CBD is the medication. It's the seizure medicine. I have a handicapped daughter. Kathy told you I got 5 kids. My youngest daughter is 3. She seizure medicine 3 times a day. If it didn't work, plain and simple, I'd do anything. You would too. This stuff has helped lots of families that have seizures, and lots of other things we'll talk about. All kinds of health products and stuff. And even we're looking at CBD from the standpoint of cancer research a little bit. And what the problem we've got with CBD is we need the science. I can say, Johnny Mayer can tell me it helps me. That's not enough. We got to know what the science is, or the FDA is allowed to take it away from us. So we've got a little work to do, a little iffy in terms of that part of it. The first year we had 11 pilot projects, 6 at universities and 5 with individuals through the Department of Ag. This is Dr. Tony Brandon standing out in the field there. He got the very first bag of seed. Matter of fact, he went home, and the next day we were in court with the DEA. Anybody remember that? I called Dr. Brandon the next day. I said, Dr. Brandon, are you drinking Mountain Dew and homing hemp? He said, if they want my seed, they're going to have to dig them up. He planted them that night. I go down there in 2 weeks, and the hemp's this tall. Dr. Brandon pulls the plant, throws it in the back of my state car, and he said, Beeler, you're the first guy in Kentucky to have hemp. Now don't get stopped. And they let it lay there for 2 weeks, as nervous as I could be. We had 18 sites that first year, 33 acres. They sent us, the Europeans and the Chinese sent us every bag of seed they had. Germination was 20%. We got one guy in the whole state that got a decent stand. He was in Bath County. So I got to figure out, what's this guy done to nobody? We planted it that deep. We planted on top of the ground. We didn't know how to plant it. Didn't know. I run out to Bath County, and I said, how'd you get a stand like this when nobody else got a stand? We walk out to the barn, and he has a grain grill so old, it had a hemp setting on it. You plant them right on top of the ground. A little moisture. We learned the first year where to plant the stuff and how to plant the stuff. We ended up with 4 processing pilot projects that first year. One making CBD, several of them energy, bedding, textiles, and so we're learning. You see it when it's little. You can see it when I visited Dr. Brandon there. And then some of the fiber stuff will get as high as 20 foot tall. Most of our grain and CBD stuff gets about 5-6 feet tall that way. Here's a pilot project that we're trying to learn about UK in the beginning, we didn't know how we needed to fertilize it. We didn't know anything about how much population we put per acre in terms of plants. It's different for seed, it's different for fiber, it's different for CBD, plain and simple. So they worked on all the varieties. We didn't know which varieties would stay under the 3/10. This stuff floats with this THC. It floats during the growth phase. So which varieties stay under that 3/10 so we don't end up growing it for nothing, burning it down when it came down to it. So working on that. Kentucky State University, I bet you a whole lot of what we cut down in this state called marijuana is hemp. Wild hemp growing on the creek banks everywhere, plain and simple. They had some old heritage seed. They thought maybe it would be the most adaptable because this is the one still surviving. And so KSU was working on that. Eastern Kentucky University was turning it into bioenergy. University of Louisville did not do one the first year, but now what they're doing, they used hemp around Chernobyl to pull toxins and heavy metals out of the ground. So U of L was looking at brownfields here in Jefferson County and pulling those toxins out of the ground. I gave a talk the other day at Fern Creek. Lady asked me, well, what do you do with all them toxins when you get them in them plants? I said, well, they're not in the ground anymore. I know we can take them, we can burn them, we can move them. I said, it's not there, but interesting. Hemp goes a little deeper with the root system. It gets nutrients we typically don't get. And pulling up some of those contaminants is really a good thing from the standpoint of soil health, soil texture. We think it'll work as a rotational crop. Murray State, I told you about, they're putting their bed and the horses with it, turning around, taking the bedding, putting it back through the bioenergy burning, generating electricity to heat their horse arena. Morehead's doing bedding deal and all kinds of it really fits good. It's really absorbent, toughest stuff in the world. And then Western's doing herbicide. There's nothing to prove. No herbicide, no pesticide. So if you're going to plant CBD and you do 1,800 plants to the acre, you're going to get the tiller out. You may have to go back and get the mule out. You got to keep the weeds out of it by hand. And that means probably the CBD side fits the tobacco side of things better, even though we have herbicides and pesticides for that particular deal. A lot we got to learn yet. Second year, we had 326 applications. They approved about half of them. One lady said, I was in the Department of Ag at this time, one lady said that she wanted to grow 3 plants. We weren't for sure what she was wanting to grow. And you got to have land, you got to have equipment, you got to have the knowledge to do it, and then what are we going to learn in terms of your basically research project in year 2. We planted, approved 1,700 acres, we planted 922 acres, still had trouble getting seed. Getting seed in here, terrible year, rained and carried on, and just like we've had for forever, seems like we have not had a good year to grow hemp since hemp showed up. Third year we had 15 university sites, we had 174 private sites through KDA, 4,500 applied for, 2,300 acres planted. Again, we talked about the review and everything, but we figured out how to grow stuff now. We're figuring out where to grow it, what to grow it, what soil types to grow it in, and it fits where we do our best farming. Tobacco ground, corn ground, soybean ground. You can't grow it on a rock. You can't grow it on a rock. It takes good soil. Year 4, 234 licenses, 12,000 acres approved, 6,700 acres planted, 72 processors have moved into Kentucky. Look here what happened this year. We're up 400%. The ball is rolling downhill so fast, we're about to run over us. Plain and simple. 1,034 licenses out there. 43,000 acres. 120 processors. Downhill. Downhill. It's scary a little bit. We're at a time in agriculture in Kentucky where we haven't made any money in the corn business in 2 or 3 years. Break even. We haven't made any money in the soybean business. We haven't made any money in the cattle business. So our farmers have got their eyes bugged out, dying for something that will help turn a profit. I was at a meeting in my little hometown of Caneyville. Turned right into the 4-way stop, went over to the school. I walk in there, there's 40 farmers in Caneyville with this man talking to them about raising hemp. None of them had a license. None of them had a license. You're not supposed to even work in hemp unless you have a license. But here's what they're doing. I am the guy with the license. I'm going to come in and rent your farm for $10. Now I got a contract. The contract says you got in CBD, you got to have cloned female plants, just like tobacco plants. Raise them in the greenhouse, plants, set it like tobacco. Similar deal. What we're going to do is give you the clone plants, because those clone plants cost $1 to $4 a piece. Multiply that times 2,000, you've got $8,000 at $4 before you ever start. Farmers aren't going to do that. Unless you bankers want to go with them. Not usually going to happen. This guy was going to give you $7.50 when you set it. Put it in the ground. $7.50 in the middle. And finish it up at $3 a dried bud pound at the end of the growing season. And then 2017, we averaged 1,024 pounds. We have been as high as 1,600. We think we can do 2,000 pounds. Interesting. That's a really good deal. I'll show you some tobacco figures in a minute so you can see how this thing plays. But the problem is, if we get in trouble, I'm renting your ground, you're not on the list anywhere. Kentucky Department of Ag knows me. They don't know you. We get into it, you don't exist. But I think what you'll see is that 1,034 is liable to go to 5,000 next year. If we got 40 farmers sitting in Caneyville, let's look at the growth stuff. They gotta have a license, need a license, plain and simple. So I'm gonna treat you like a hired hand. Of course, if anybody knows I am renting your farm and I am doing the work, even though you're doing the work, you should have a license. Processing, we got 120 processors. Seed side, we funded 3 of them. One in fiber, or in the seed thing. Victory Hemp in Henry County, they moved out of Carroll County. They're making hemp hearts, hemp protein. A guy named Chad Rosen does a great job making money. Already he's making money. He's buying seed from all over the world because we're not producing enough seed. That's the supplements in the health foods. That's the hemp hearts you're talking about. That's the hemp oil from the seed that we're talking about. Victory Hemp in Henry County. Sunstrand was right here in Louisville. Now they're moving out to Carroll County. Anything you can make out of plastic or steel, you can make out of hemp. Google hemp car. Guess who comes up? Henry Ford. It's not new. It's not new. Henry Ford. They got, I don't know how many products. It looks like chipboard to things you put in concrete, the whole 9 yards. Of the ones, the fiber thing is an interesting deal. And here's why I think the forestry people help throw it away. 1 acre of hemp will produce as much paper as 4 acres of trees. It takes 20 years to grow the trees. It takes 150 days to grow the hemp. We in agriculture have lost 22 million acres of farmland in the last 10 years. Doesn't it make sense? You can produce more with less and do it sustainably and maintain things. And then we funded the tallow, and that's the CBD production. They're doing lots of work. They have figured out a way to separate the cannabinoids, the CBD, from the THC. The problem isn't as good a medication without the THC. That's the answers we don't know yet. A tallow is in Winchester. They have been gobbled up by the big boy, Gincana. And Gincana is a wonderful company, investing $40 million in Mayfield. Probably we're going to have 5, 6, 7, 8,000 acres of hemp in that far western Kentucky area down there. So that's the 3 we have funded. 120 processors. I told the doctor right here a few minutes ago, I said, we feel a little bit like it's been a great big storm and the roofers showed up. You know, there's good roofers and there's not so good roofers. So I tell our farmers, please be careful. Please be careful. Same advice to you. Please be careful. Know who you're dealing with. We got folks, we had one the other day came to us and wanted $1 million from the Ag Development Fund. Big talker, fast talker. Come in and anymore I have learned, I don't measure the project. I measure the people. You know, people make them go people make them not go. This guy got to talking about giving CBD to his cat. How his cat slicked off, looked the prettiest he never looked. We got a lady on our board that is Miss Hemp. She's done forgotten more than anybody knows about it. Been involved before we even started. She leans over to me and she said, "Hemp's toxic to cats." I didn't listen too much after that, other than the fact he said, "We're going to put it in pet food and livestock feed." That's not legal. Now, I got a little bag at the house yesterday. Some man gave me a dog treat with CBD. Doing it. It's not legal. Not even after the farm bill. It's not legal. It needs to be. It's got real opportunity there. I asked the guy, I said, "Hi, this place wrong." I said, "How you doing it?" He said, "Well, we're treating it like a nutraceutical, not a pharmaceutical." Well, you don't get that choice at all. But we got to get it approved. We got to get it approved. Wouldn't it be interesting? There's something in hemp that will make you healthy. What if we could eat something good that tastes good and it'd be good for you? Instead of having to eat straw and drink water and lose weight, I'm against that. I'm against that. On the economic side of this thing, we're at about 800 to 1,200 pounds of seed. We've done as much as 1,600 pounds of seed per acre. Dr. Williams in UK, who's the hemp czar, runs Robinson Station in Jackson. He says he believes with just a little bit of work genetically, we can do 2,000 pounds of seed per acre. If we can do 2,000 pounds of seed per acre and sell it at 60 cents, that's $1,200. Right now we're selling somewhere to 6 to 800 range on deal. We do 200 bushel corn at 350, we're at 700. You see how it plays? Got to be in the same deal. If hemp comes in, corn or beans, tobacco's got to go out. We don't have extra land that's sitting out there just to grow hemp on. It's got to replace something a little bit. Fiber side, we're at 1.5 tons to 5 tons. Less money in the fiber thing at farm level. And that will probably hurt us a little bit because we won't grow it unless we can make a profit. You can do things what you need to do in the deal. You see where we're at. Here's the thing. The fiber varieties are 18, 20 foot tall. I'll show you a picture in a minute. I mean, it's wild. But if there's no money, what we're going to have to do is use the seed and CBD varieties, which are only 6 foot tall. So maybe we can do multi-products out of the thing and see where we're at. CBD's 80 to 90% of what we're doing in Kentucky is CBD because that's where the money's at. You with me? We do it just like tobacco. You set it with the tobacco center with transplants, 1,800, 2,000 plants a acre. You cut it and hang it in the barn just like tobacco. Dry it down. We got people who are pulling the buds off in the barn like we strip tobacco. Or we got people who come and bale the whole thing. We've even got a few people that are trying to chop it. And then bale it in balers that are so tight that it doesn't spoil. Got a lot to learn on the equipment, plain and simple. They're talking the realistic ones now. I've heard this, how many of you heard this $30,000 an acre stuff? That's in the Bible. They ain't gonna share that with you at farm level. There's some money in this thing, plain and simple. But where is that money? We're looking at farm level. I think realistically, I know a man who got $6,000 to the acre and got paid. He was doing both seed and CBD in Mason County. His name's Joe Collins. He's with a talent. I know other people who are sitting around $3,000. $3,000 is still really, really good. I don't think it's quite as much work as tobacco. But $3,000 to $7,000 an acre. Here's tobacco over here. See where we're at? We do 2,500 pounds at $2. We have $5,000 gross. The good thing about tobacco is, and hemp, is that we have H2A, and we have labor. Go put it in the barn, it doesn't jump in there by itself. We don't have a machine that puts it in there. We do it by hand. And then the problem is with the weed control, pest control. How are we going to do that without hemp? Got a lot to learn. Got a lot to learn. Constraints. I'll tell you. I got to tell you a deal about the hemp. I told I said, the only thing I've ever seen get controversial in Frankfurt in the Agriculture Committee, in agriculture we don't have Democrats and Republicans, we just got ag people. But hemp got political. It got political as political gets. I mean, nasty, ugly kind of a deal. I never forget one of the senators asked, did he get high smoking hemp? This guy from the CIA was testifying for him. He said, well, hemp has 0.3% THC or less. Mad marijuana, 10%. He said, can you get high smoking hemp? We said, well, I guess you could, but you'd have to smoke a telephone pole in an hour. You're not likely to get there. You're not going to get high smoking hemp. People go out here and steal this hemp out of the field and think it's marijuana, going to be really disappointed. And what we get is that they do cross-pollinate. You can grow marijuana right with the hemp the first year. But the next year, when they cross-pollination, keep those seeds, you got bad hemp and bad marijuana. So marijuana people really don't like hemp. When a guy told me yesterday, he said, one of his neighbors said, you're not going to grow that hemp over here, are you? Reading between the lines, he knew exactly what that guy was talking about. Plain and simple. Here's why we might not grow hemp. We got to make a profit. Got to push something out at farm level that we've been doing forever. And farmers are the hardest-handed deal. They just do it over. We do the same thing over and over again, breaking even and thinking we're just doing good. I'd still be hog farming if I could break even. Raise my family there. It's wonderful. Love it. But something's got to go for something else to come in. And it's got to turn a profit. It's got to push something out. Corn, beans, tobacco, those kind of deals. Good deal. The other reason we won't rely is government restriction. Just how hard is it to do the GPS? How hard is this testing deal in terms of putting up with it? Plain and simple. And then Congressman Massey told me, he said, Warren, you watch. As soon as the Farm Bill passes, FDA will take CBD off the market and start regulating the daylights out of it. Well, they didn't do that, but they put out this generic statement that said that they had the power to do that. A little bit scary. A little bit scary. That's why we need the science. We need the science. How is CBD helping people in that part of it? So the government scares us to death. We cannot. I'm going to tell you something about the CBD. It's helping people. Everywhere I go. I had a group Monday in Graves County, leadership group that Representative Heath needed me to talk to them, and I asked them, how many of you are taking CBD? 15 of them in the class, 7 of them raised their hand. In Graves County. I was in Nashville the other day, and a lady came up to me, and she was in her 60s. She was a nurse. She said, after my talk, she said, Mr. Beeler, I've been taking it for almost 2 months. 3, I had arthritis in my hands, killing me being a nurse. 3 weeks it fixed it. Plain and simple. She said, then they drug tested me at the hospital and they fired me. Teeny bit of THC. We got to figure out the difference between THC from CBD and THC from marijuana. That's got to be fixed. That's got to be fixed. My mother-in-law, Dee Dee's mom, fighting pancreatic cancer. That's the nastiest one in the world. It's just, and so I heard she was sick as she could be, chemo, and so I get up the nerve to go after her. I'm not a hip crazy. I'm a realistic ag guy. I get up the nerve to go in and ask her, I said, first off, you have to know this. I'm her 3rd favorite son-in-law out of 3, so I didn't have hard to fall. You didn't want it. So I said, Mimi, I want you to try this stuff. The doctor, people tell me it'll make you feel better. Not cure you, make you feel better. She said, the doctor's already prescribed hemp oil from the seed for my stomach. I went and bought her a bottle, not that big. At that time, $120. I'd give it $1,200. It didn't matter. She did, nothing changed now, and I'm not crazy, nothing changed but the CBD. She's in bed, sick as she could be. 3 weeks later, she flew to Texas to visit her mother, who's 99. God put all these plants on this earth for a reason. There's not a reason in the world we can't just get out of the way. We got to figure out what it does. I'm telling you, Mimi is now on her 3rd year. She's in the 5 to 7 percentile. Went back to the doctor yesterday and the tumors are coming back a little bit, but now she ought to be gone. I know people who've lasted 17 days for pancreatic cancer. What's it do? How does it help? Too many people said help, so what do? We get figured out. The one thing we wouldn't grow it is we gotta have crop insurance. I don't know if you all understand this about crop insurance, but it's like buying car insurance. We don't want to cash the crop insurance in. We get a good year, we don't touch the crop, we buy it like insurance, it's just insurance. But when it's a bad year, it keeps us in business. It's just a safety net, and it is in the Farm Bill. The problem with hemp crop insurance, we don't know the value of it yet. We gotta have a value for seed, a value for fiber, a value for CBD, and that takes 4 or 5 years probably to establish a yield and value as such. Again, the fiber part of it is a lot of times big round bales or big square bales. Bulky to handle, hard to haul, but it costs some money. So we need these markets closer to where the things are being raised. And then, plain and simple, if we're gonna make paper, then we gotta push paper out. You see what I'm saying, at the marketplace. Gotta establish the market. That means we gotta have marketing people, we gotta have sales people, we gotta do it. And then the biggest question of all is, what we don't know, is how big is the market? Canada's doubled their production, we're buying it all. We got people in here. The thing that's unique about hemp is, it's not being driven from the farm up. It's being driven from the market back. That's a really good sign. Good sign. How big is the seed market? How big is the fiber market? How big is the CBD market? Answers we don't know. Here's, I called over to economic development. I told you we had 120 processors. 8 of them have talked economic development, and those 8 have invested $52,729,300 and created 535 jobs so far. We got investors from everywhere. I was at a meeting last week at Bowling Green, the Industrial Hemp Association state meeting. One of my folks were sitting there, listening to 2 people talk next door, and this guy says, where are you from? He said, I'm from Florida. Boy, he said, I got you beat. I'm from Northern California. We got money flowing into Kentucky like this, there's no end to it. We got Canada money, Chinese money, Australian money. We got farmers putting money in. And then we got marijuana money coming in from Colorado and Washington and all kinds of places. It's all rolling downhill. The one thing we know is probably of all the crops we've ever seen, hemp is the most versatile crop with 3 products. What you can do with it is off the charts. It grows terrific in Kentucky. It fits our tobacco type climate, our tobacco type soils. It isn't a replacement for tobacco, time will tell, but it's the best chance we've had in forever and ever. It comes down to it. What we need is certified seed. They will sell you anything. You think Europe's going to send us their best seed? You're kidding yourself. We got to have our own certified seed program. We got to know how much it germinates. We got to know that it stays under that 3/10 CBD, the THC and the CBD. We've got to know that. And then we got to have better equipment. I called a guy when we were working on my first talk on him. This is the 4th or 5th version. I called Canada and I said, how do you harvest these seed? And he said, well, you do it with a combine. It takes a special combine. With the seed, we got a problem with the seed maturing at different levels on the stalk. Seed's done up here, but green down here won't work. We got to have them mature at the same level. We can fix that. I said, hey, you do it. So we'll do a combine. He said, but I'll never stick my combine in it again. He said, it will tear a combine all to pieces. This is the toughest stuff you've ever seen about trying to run through anything. It's not like corn or beans where it winds up around rollers and it's tear. But there's equipment out there from Australia and other places that we need to work on. How do we harvest? And then we have been no money spent on genetics. So niche market, been all over the country. Most of the countries that had it before have subsidized it. Got to be subsidized here. It's got to stand on its own. It's got to do what it's going to do. But genetically, Dr. Williams tells me he can go from 1,000 pound of seed to 2,000 pound seed by finding the right varieties, the right soil type, the right fertilizer levels, all those things right around the corner. Here's why it's so important. We're first. Everybody calls us. I used to sit on conference calls with the commissioners of ag and the Department of Ag. We got all the hemp questions. We're still getting them all. The thing about being first is what? We got 120 processors here. We load the processors here, we grow the stuff here. It's not the kind of thing, maybe the seed you can transport a long ways away. Most of the stuff, you're going to do it right here in Kentucky. It's got to be profitable for every level, or nothing works. And we're looking at hemp as economic development for Kentucky, plain and simple. I always love this one because it's the one about 1 acre of hemp will produce as much paper as 4 acres of trees. You can see this is a way old picture. You see that stuff, how tall it gets in terms of that part. I've got one more slide that I think is intriguing to you all, since you're investors and you're people that are intrigued by this type of thing. We got another product called Artemisia. They call it wormwood. And we had a guy come in our office a few months ago from Germany. This guy had a PhD from MIT. I wasn't sure I could even talk to him, so I brought the smart ones in with me. And he said he's got this product, Artemisia. This is the only medication for malaria in the world. I guess we still lose 400,000 people in the world from malaria. He came to Kentucky because you grow it like tobacco. Problem is, it's a 200-day growing season. But it appears by the time it gets to the cold weather, it's already done and in good shape that way. University of Kentucky is doing trials right now, second year, on the thing. They went to China to swap research with them. The good thing isn't malaria. It's that in other countries, they're using Artemisia to treat cancer like we use chemo here in the United States. It just kills me. I guess my mother-in-law has made it that way. There's no excuse. There's no excuse. I think we like treating cancer better than we like curing cancer. And then, God put all these things in this earth. There's got to be a reason out there. There's got to be a cure for cancer. And that's what makes agriculture so exciting. There's lots out there that we don't know that will get this thing figured out. Plain and simple. Here's another one. They want 30,000 acres in 3 years. That's what they're talking. Locating the processing facility here in Kentucky. We got a project with chia, Simpson County. Cereal companies want chia as a health food. Water holding capacity, I guess it's 5 times more normal seeds. Simpson County got chia. Sumac. We've been trying to kill it for 100 years. Now we find out with a study it's full of tannins. They're in all kinds of diet foods. Mine starts Monday. And then this Artemisia is unreal. Agriculture's so excited right now about what we might be growing and how we might be growing it. I stopped at a place last week, I get mixed up, called Marzetti's in Horse Cave, Kentucky. Sister Schubert's. Marzetti's makes all the dressing and sauce for Buffalo Wild Wings and Wendy's. They get 45 semi-loads of soy oil from Olmsted grain every week. They get loads and loads and loads of produce and product and peppers from all over the world. None of them from Kentucky. What might we be growing in 20 years? What will agriculture look like in 20 years? I'm obsessed with it. I can't help myself. Questions? Have I confused you completely? Yes?
Will there be a problem with labor shortages?
We really are pleased to have Mark here today, and he's going to be addressing the economic economy, and hopefully you'll learn some more tidbits. Thank you.
Tough act to follow. Wow, what a great speaker, great topic. As you know, I always ask this every year, who's been to one of these before? Who hasn't been? How's that? That'd be few hands. So a few people. Who has been to all 24 of these? This is the 24th one And I think the only people that have been to all of them are Kathy, Todd Barron, Judah Schmucky, and myself. Nobody's been to all 24. Well, for those of you who have not been to one of these before, what I'm going to be talking about is the economy and the capital markets. And the time horizon that I'm looking at here is about 18 months. So we're going to go into 2020, pretty far into 2020. I'm also going to be talking about some things that would blow up our generally positive attitude about the economy and the capital markets. And I'm going to do it within the context of the fourth quarter volatility that we had in the stock market. I think everybody was very surprised at how bad the fourth quarter was. It was one of the worst months on record, and it happened just in time for everybody to get their 12/31 statement. Okay, so we heard a lot about it. But I want to do it in the context of that market volatility because I think many of the things that I've been worried about made the headlines during the fourth quarter and had the impact that it had on the market, taking it down about 14%. I'm also going to talk about some of the things that you should be doing in your portfolio, that we're doing in client portfolios to kind of combat this volatility because I don't think it's completely over yet. And then in the last part of the speech, we're going to talk a little bit about the title. There are some traditions associated with this speech. And the first tradition is that I make it interactive. I need feedback from you all to find out if what we're saying makes intuitive sense to you. If it's something that sounds like we're way up in left field, we want to know about it because you as business people, you as clients, you as consumers, I think know as much about what's going on in the economy as all the government statisticians put together. The second tradition is I'm not going to be quoting a lot of government stats. Most of what we say today is going to be commonsensical and hopefully something that everybody feels makes sense. And then the third tradition is the naming of the speech. If you don't know who the person is on the cover page here, that's Merlin the Magician. And what we're going to talk about at the end of the speech is magical things. Things that I feel like we've been blessed with here in the United States and in our own political and economic and capital market system that are magical, that we use on a day-to-day basis when we're managing money for people and that you can use as well. So let's get interactive right away. Who thinks we're going to have a recession this year? 1, 2 hands. Wow, this is an optimistic group. Who thinks we're going to have one in 2020? A few more hands. Okay. Who thinks interest rates are going to go up? Lots of hands. Okay. Who thinks they're going to go down? Anyone? Who thinks we're going to have a positive return from the stock market this year? Well, we've already had a pretty good start, right? January and February have been pretty spectacular. And improved by a point that you can't time the market, right? Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about the economy and see if I can run the slideshow. 2018 was a pretty good year for the economy. If you remember this time last year, we were talking about 3% type growth, and if we don't get a revision to the fourth quarter GDP numbers again, we're going to come in at 2.9%, so we were pretty close. I think that 2019 is going to be very similar to 2018. We do not see a recession on the horizon, and there are a number of reasons for that. The growth may be a little bit slower than it was in 2018, but I think it's still going to be better than the average of the last 10 years or so. There are several reasons for that. First is leading economic indicators. And the leading economic indicators are a basket of economic indicators that the Department of Labor throws together that includes everything from industrial production to consumer spending to consumer confidence. There's about 12 things. And this has been a very, very good indicator of when we're going to have a recession and when the economy looks pretty good. If you'll notice, each time that we get a dip in the blue line, we generally have a recession in about 6 months or so. So, right now, these leading economic indicators, all but about 1 or 2 of them are in the green. And we have very seldom had a recession over the last 50 years when the leading economic indicators are indicating that we're going to get growth. So that's the first thing, very positive. Economic indicators look good. Second thing, interest rates are going to stay low. I asked everybody what they thought interest rates were going to do. I think there's a lot of reasons that we'll talk about when we get to the capital markets that interest rates could stay fairly low to stable at about the levels they are now over the next 12 to 18 months. Why is that important for the economy? Because interest rates are very closely related to economic activity. The lower interest rates are, the easier it is to get a loan, to make business decisions about new investments, and I think that hurdle rate is going to stay low for a little while. There is a direct correlation between low interest rates and economic activity, and as long as we have low interest rates on a relative basis, I think you can expect economic growth. Third thing, corporate profits are growing. Last year was a huge period for corporate profit growth. Everybody expects that we're going to get somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 to 8% corporate profit growth this year, and maybe about 6% in 2020. We would not get that type of corporate profit growth unless we have economic activity. And so growth is very tied to corporate profits. We're expecting a growth in corporate profits this year of 7%, about 6% next year. That won't happen unless we have a pretty good economy. Third thing, housing seems to be recovering. Who here is looking for a new house? Anybody? I am looking for a new house. Are you having any trouble finding a house? Yeah. Not a lot out there on the market, and as a result of that, prices look fairly strong, and new housing permits look very good. So housing, while it's not a huge part of our economy, it affects a lot of industry groups that are a huge part of our economy. Things like construction materials, lumber, concrete, things of that nature, appliances, furniture, all of those things, when you combine them, are a pretty good part of the economy. And with housing doing well, I think the economy will probably do pretty well. Consumer and business confidence, one of those leading economic indicators. I have not seen consumer and business confidence as high over the last 6 months as I have in a long time. It looks very good. And why is that important? Well, it helps consumer spending and business spending, and that's about 70% of our economy. So when consumer confidence and business confidence is high, that looks good for the economy because we go out and spend money. Related to that is the employment data. Now, we had some weaker than expected employment numbers last week, but right now we are at a 48-year low in terms of the unemployment rate. People are re-entering the labor market and finding jobs. And that's important to our economy because this is a driving force. When you have people who have paychecks in their pockets, they're much more likely to stop at McDonald's and get a burger or go to Target and spend some money. And so this employment rate is very closely related to economic activity. We have never had a recession when we've been operating at full employment. And we are essentially at full employment right now. The unemployment rate is 3.9%. Generally, economists think that 4% unemployment is full employment because 4% of our labor force is generally in transition at any one point in time, either between jobs or unable to work because of illness. So, 3% growth or so, people say, well, that's not great. And they go back to, this is the 13th year that we've been less than 3% growth in GDP. But I will tell you there's some positive things associated with that. First of all, 3% growth is very sustainable. Secondly, 3% growth will produce corporate profits, but won't produce a lot of inflation. And inflation is every investor's nightmare. Inflation and deflation are the two nightmares that I have when I worry about the markets. So 3% growth, very sustainable. 3% growth, keeping inflation under control. And we had some numbers last week on CPI and PPI, the Consumer Price Index and Producer Price Index. They look very good, well within the Fed's target range. What does all this mean for the capital markets? We'll talk about the bond market first because a lot of people thought interest rates were going to go up. I think interest rates can remain low to stable about the way they are now. I think the yield curve is going to be very flat, and that's one of those leading indicators that's negative right now. One of the good recession predictors is an inverted yield curve where short-term rates are higher than long-term rates. Right now, the yield curve is very flat. There's virtually no difference in yield between the 2-year Treasury and the 10-year Treasury. And I think it's going to remain that way for the next 12 to 18 months or so. The main reasons for that are, first, inflation is very much under control. Bond investors demand an inflation premium on the yields that they get on the bonds that they buy. They want to make sure that they maintain some semblance of purchasing power on the income that they receive from their fixed income investments. And when inflation is very low, they don't have to have a huge yield on their investments to maintain that inflation premium in the total return. So there's a very direct correlation between inflation and interest rates. As inflation goes up, interest rates go up. As inflation goes down or remains stable, interest rates can go down and remain very stable. Second reason, it looks like the Federal Reserve has changed its policy. If you remember back in October last year, the new Fed Chairman Powell announced that he was thinking about 4 interest rate increases in 2019. And that was coincidentally the start of the decline in the stock market. He almost immediately walked that back and said, well, maybe 2. And now they're saying maybe 1 or maybe none. One of the things that we look at in interest rate committee on the banking side are Fed funds futures. They are the anticipated rate that Fed funds are going to have. Right now, we're about a 93% chance that there's not going to be an increase in interest rates in the first 6 months of this year. And in fact, there's a greater chance right now, according to Fed funds futures, that we have a decline in rates in the fourth quarter as opposed to an increase in rates. So if the Fed doesn't do anything on the short-term rates, I think we could have stable interest rates at these levels or close to it for a little while longer. Foreign rates. Foreign rates are very low compared to U.S. rates. And we're in the electronic age now. Capital moves freely between countries. So if I'm an investor in Europe or in Asia or any place, and I see that the yield on Scandinavian debt or German debt or French debt or British debt or Japanese debt is very, very small, close to 0. On the other hand, I can get 2.6% out of a 10-year treasury, the same maturity where those rates are 0 in other countries. My bet is I would send money to the United States to invest at that 2.6%, even if that is a low rate. It's higher than what's on foreign bonds. And we've got the political and economic stability of the United States behind that debt. So I think that the demand from foreign sources is going to continue, and it's going to allow the Federal Reserve to unwind all their quantitative easing and be a source of support for our bond markets. And then the final thing is an anecdotal piece of evidence. I think it's very politically expedient for us to keep interest rates low. Congress and the President don't agree on much, but I think they would all agree that we want economic activity to continue and that we don't want big deficits. And to accomplish those 2 goals, it would be much easier to keep interest rates low. Does that make sense? Everybody's got to nod their head for me, please. Thank you. So, bond market. We think it's going to be pretty stable this year. Think that interest rates are probably not going to change a lot. The yield curve is going to remain flat. What's this mean for the stock market? Stocks remain the financial asset of choice for us in the trusted part. If you have an account with us, we're probably close to the high end in terms of the asset allocation that we have for common stocks. And the main reason for that are, first of all, we think that we're in a secular bull market for stocks. And amazingly, it looks like it's mirroring the secular bull market that we had after the 1987 decline. Everybody remember October 19, 1987, when the market dropped 508 points, some 21% in one day? Well, that seems to be mirroring that 2008-2009 financial crisis that we had, when the market dropped about 48%. We followed that 1987 decline with about a 7-year recovery and then had a 1-year correction. And it looks like we've had a 7-year recovery and just had our 1-year correction. So if this history holds true, we could have a pretty good next 5 to 7 years in the stock market. I'm not sure whether this is something you can hang your hat on, but it looks remarkably similar. What is a secular bull market? It's a market in stocks where prices generally go up. It does not mean we won't have corrections like the difficult one that we just experienced in 2018. It doesn't mean there won't be periods of time that things get a little dicey. It just means that the general trend is up. So why is this? Well, the first thing is valuations. One of the things that we look at very hard is the valuation on the overall stock market and on the individual securities that we purchased. And right now, valuation levels, by just about any measure, whether you're looking at price compared to sales, price compared to earnings, price compared to cash flow, price compared to dividends, they all look like they're below the 25-year average for the stock market. This chart shows the PE ratios on the stock market. The 16.1 times earnings is what the market has sold at on average over the last 25 years. Now it's selling at about 14.4 times earnings, almost one standard deviation below the average. And that, statistically speaking, is significant to us. We think this is meaningful. Generally, when you buy stocks below the average valuation, you buy at pretty good prices, and your return's pretty good going forward. Second thing, I mentioned corporate profits are growing when we were talking about the economy. Most analysts are expecting about a 6% increase in corporate profits next year, and corporate profits are the fuel that generally drive markets higher. And when they go up, they generally drive markets higher at a faster rate. When they go down, it's negative, but we're looking for positive increase in corporate profits. This is a measure of last year's earnings, this year's earnings expected from analysts, and 2020's earnings compared to the S&P 500. Corporate profit growth, always a good thing. Third thing, interest rates remain low. That helps the stock market two different ways. Interest rates are a big part of the determining factor of what PE ratios are. There's an inverse relationship there. Lower interest rates generally give you higher price-earnings ratios. Second thing that's good about low interest rates is there's very little competition for stocks. When you've got the choice of buying a blue chip, high-quality company that increases its dividend every year, or a 2.6% 10-year, who wants the 2.6% 10-year treasury? I like it when a plan comes together. Who wants the stock? And I can name you 24 names that are in the S&P 500 that are high-quality companies that grow their dividends that have yields equivalent to that 10-year treasury rate. And most of our customers are requiring the money that we manage for them to pay some of their bills and help them to live. And so we like these dividend-paying stocks. They grow their dividend for those customers. Finally, historical returns. Historical returns favor stocks by a large margin, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to magical things. When you go back to 1924, the average return from the stock market has been about 10%. The return from almost every other financial asset is basically half of that. So historically, stocks have always been the place to be. And when you put the combination of a growing economy, growing corporate profits, reasonable valuations, and low interest rates together, that's a prescription for pretty good long-term performance from the stock market. What could go wrong? Well, not coincidentally, many of the things that we worry about that I lose sleep at night over were in the headlines in the fourth quarter, beginning in October. And the first is the Federal Reserve and interest rates. I mentioned it was not a coincidence that when the new Fed Chairman Powell came out and said he anticipated maybe 4 interest rate increases in 2019, that the market started its decline. That worried me. It worried a lot of investment professionals and you as individual investors as well, because one of the things we've been talking about for a long time is the Fed has a very narrow plank to walk this time. And everybody worried that the Fed was going to overshoot things. and increase interest rates too quickly and reduce economic activity. And that's something that everybody is worried about. And I will tell you that interest rates and low interest rates are a double-edged sword. They exacerbate growth during good times, leverage, and when things get bad, they really hurt things. And if you remember back to the 2008-2009 financial crisis, the Fed took interest rates down to zero without much of an impact on economic activity. Now they're slowly unwinding their quantitative easing, slowly increasing interest rates to try and get them more normal. And doing it too fast will cause the economy to slow down. Doing it too slowly will create inflation. And that's the narrow plank that the Fed has to walk. Economic growth on one side going down, or inflation going up on the other side. And I think that what happened in the fourth quarter when the Fed announced that, everyone saw that the Fed was going to slow the economy down, that was going to negatively impact corporate profits, and that was going to take the stock market down. So the Federal Reserve and interest rates and what they do, I think, is a very important part of this. And the fourth quarter showed me, anyway, how fine a line the Fed has to walk this time around in this economic cycle. Global economic slowdown. The economic numbers in the United States look pretty good, and not so good the rest of the world. We've had Germany report some negative GDP. We had Japan report negative GDP. China's growth is slowing dramatically. This Brexit thing and some of the credit quality problems in the Eurozone are negatively impacting growth there. That is being exacerbated, I think, because of worries about tariffs and trade. And what this administration is doing to try and bring many of our trading partners back to the table and renegotiate some of the trade agreements that we have. If we have a slowing of global growth, the worry is that it will eventually spill over into the United States economy, and we will slow down as well. And that, I think, came to a head in the fourth quarter. There was a lot of announcements of weak economic conditions throughout the rest of the world, and a lot of talk about tariffs and trades. And people worried about a trade war, and they worried about it impacting our economic activity and our capital markets. Third thing, algorithmic trading. I had to practice saying algorithmic trading a number of times before I got up here this morning. What is algorithmic trading? It's trading that's done by computer, and it's based on momentum. When you see the market down 200 or 300 points and it spikes down another 100, that wasn't the people at StockYardsBank or any of the other financial institutions in the country putting in trades individually for our customers. It was computer programs that were made to mimic what they think the momentum is of the market. And those computers kick on automatically, and they don't care if there's economic growth, and they don't care what the valuation levels are, and they don't care what corporate profits are, and they don't care what they're selling. They're selling a basket of stocks, and they will very quickly take the market down. It's estimated by the Wall Street Journal that about 80% of the trading that takes place after the market's down 200 points is this algorithmic trading. And algorithmic trading worries us. It's something that exacerbates the problem, and I think the correction that we had in the fourth quarter would have been one of those normal 10 to 12% type numbers down, except for the fact that this algorithmic trading kicked in and made it more of a 14 or 15% decline. So algorithmic trading is something that exacerbates the problems that take place in the market. It can also help on the upside, but mainly what it does is it gets people out. And the final thing, a big bugaboo of mine, and it has been for almost the 24 times that I've been in front of you, the debt. Anybody notice the debt clock about 2 weeks ago? It passed $22 trillion. And that's a big number, trillion with a T. When you add into that all of the corporate debt that we have, when you add into that all the state and local debt that we have, when you add into it all of our credit card and mortgage debt and the student loan debt, you come up with some big numbers. And then throw on top of that the unfunded pension liabilities we have in states like Kentucky, which is estimated to be about $32 billion in our state alone. That's a lot of money. But $22 trillion in U.S. government debt is the equivalent of $436,000 for every family in the United States. Why is that worrisome? Well, I mentioned debt is something that's like a double-edged sword as well as interest rates. It really spikes growth when things are good, and it takes it down pretty hard when things are bad. The other problem with this is it limits the policy tools available to the Federal Reserve and to the U.S. government when we have the inevitable recession. This much debt is going to be problematic. And the only way for us to get out of it is to grow out of it, grow faster than that 2.5% to 3% rate that we've been experiencing. Because I don't think we have the political wherewithal, and this is the only time I'll get political today, to reduce the amount of spending that takes place at the federal and state level. So, debt, double-edged sword. When we inevitably do have the next recession, it's going to limit what the Federal Reserve can do in terms of lowering interest rates and the impact that will have. And it's going to limit the policy options that the federal government will have because they don't have the cushion to spend money the way they used to. Does that make sense? So if you're going to write to your congressman about anything, write to them about the level of debt we have and the amount of spending that we're doing. Okay, the volatility that we experienced in the fourth quarter, right before the 12/31 statements went out, I know upset a lot of people. And they called and wanted advice from us. And it seems like every 6 months or so I had to dust off some of our charts that talk about volatility and what you should do about it. So I'm going to tell you what you should do about it right now. Not much. And there's several reasons for not doing much. First is no one can time the market. I bet I've said that 24 straight years standing up here. Too many successful decisions to buy and to sell and to buy have to be made in succession for anyone to be consistently successful doing it. Who here sold out before October? Who here, if you did, got back in January 1? Okay, you might have missed the 14% decline if you sold in September. But did you grab the 8% that went up in January? Because if you didn't, your performance this year is shot, is torpedoed. If you didn't experience the 8% bounce back that happened, and generally happens when we have a decline of that magnitude pretty quickly, then your performance this year is going to lag. So the only way that you can make sure that you're in there for those good days that make all the difference in returns is to make sure you don't get out. No one can time the market. And I'll go straight to human nature on this. There's a reason you can't time the market. We all want to buy when things look great. We all want to sell when things look horrible, and to maximize performance, you ought to do the opposite, right? Buy when nobody wants stocks, and sell when everybody wants to get in the market. So human nature is one of the biggest contributing factors to not being able to time the market. Confidence in the U.S. economy and capital markets. This is one of those power charts that we dust off every once in a while and update. It shows since 1946 or so, since World War II, the red part at the bottom is bear markets, and the green part at the top, bull markets. We've had 11 of each. The bull markets generally last about 5 years. The bear markets usually last about 11 months. The bear markets usually go down about 25%, and the bull markets usually go up about 57%. Graphically, check this out. The bull markets average a return of around 136%, and they're much bigger than the red markets. And every time we've had a bear market, the market has bounced back and provided investors with very, very good long-term returns. So, one of the great things about being in the United States that we'll talk about in Magical Things is that this always happens. If history is going to repeat itself, this always happens. You say, well, what about October of '87, and what about that fourth quarter? How bad was that? Well, we've had 42 times, another chart we dust off occasionally, when the market's dropped 4% or more in a single day. Want to guess what the average return was if you had bought the stock market on the very next day? 1 year later, your return would have been 21%. So, timing the market, you can't do it. It's not efficient. What happens is the bounce back happens so quickly and so dramatically in such a short period of time that you don't have a chance to get out and get back in a timely fashion. So what do you do in a volatile market? What are we doing in portfolios because of this volatility? And I will tell you the first thing that we're doing is we're reviewing asset allocation plans. Keith Blakely wrote a very, very good article on the asset allocation process that we use when we're handling people's money. And it was in our last investment insight piece. I would recommend that to you. We want to make sure that we don't have a position in financial assets that exceeds our customers' tolerance for risk, taste for volatility, and income needs, and time horizon. So, asset allocation, tremendously important. If you have the right asset allocation, you can ignore this volatility and short-term price swings in the market. Confident that we have put a portfolio together for you that has a safety net associated with it, that has some non-financial assets associated with it, things that are not going to react negatively when the stock market goes down. So, asset allocation, number one priority. Number two priority, that diversification thing. People say, okay, well, at 2.6% interest rate, that's terrible. I don't want any bonds in my portfolio. Well, in the fourth quarter, they wanted some bonds, I got to tell you, because the bonds provided a safety net in the portfolio. You should have, on the financial side of your portfolio, not only commitments to common stocks, but all different types of common stocks, foreign common stocks, value stocks, growth stocks, international small cap. You should also have commitments to fixed income that run the gamut, as long as they stay high quality, which we'll get into here in a second. You should have some non-financial assets in your portfolio, and most of you own a home, that's part of your non-financial assets. During that fourth quarter of last year, housing prices increased about 3%, I believe. So you need to have a diversified portfolio of assets, both financial and otherwise. On the fixed income side, what are we doing? Well, we put a quality floor on things. We have always been high quality buyers of fixed income, and never more so than now. We will not buy a bond less than A-rated by one of the major rating services. And the reason for that is we do not want to take any default risk in portfolios. We, in spite of the fact that we think the economy is going to continue to grow, know that this economy is getting a little long in the tooth. In fact, if this economy continues to grow through the first quarter of this year, it will be the longest economic expansion on record since World War II. It's late in the credit cycle because of that. So we're not going to take any risk by buying a bunch of junk paper for you in your portfolio. I think one of the things that hurt the markets in the fourth quarter were a couple of very significant downgrades that took place. One of them was GE, which used to be a pristine credit. We're not going to take the risk of owning bonds that could be downgraded to junk status or going into default. The other thing we're doing is reducing average maturities. If you have maturity in your fixed income portfolio or reinvesting some of the income, it doesn't make a lot of sense for me when the yield on the 2-year is almost the same as the yield on the 10-year to take the added risk of buying a 10-year security. That security is a lot more volatile than the 2-year. So we're going to stay pretty short on that. Make sense? I see a lot of people I see Steve nodding his head, thank you. What about the stock side? We are kind of concentrating our efforts in dividend payers and growers. Most of the changes that we've made over the last 6 months have been to reduce what I would call high growth type vehicle stocks to buy more value-oriented stocks. And there's a couple of reasons for that. The first is the growth side of the stock market has outperformed pretty dramatically for the last 3 years. The FANG stocks, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google, all of those stocks have outperformed by a wide margin. They're huge portions of the major indices, and they're trading at valuation levels that are very, very high, with the exception of Apple. Those are stocks that, if they did stub their toe and miss on their earnings or sales projections, would be negatively impacted in the marketplace because expectations are so high for them. And because they've outperformed for so long, the other side of the coin, the value side, seems to be really valuable to us right now. So one of the things that we're doing is making sure we buy companies that pay a dividend and grow the dividend. The second reason for doing that is when you're in volatile times, when you're in uncertain times, when you're in times when the market has these corrections, those stocks hold up much better than non-dividend paying stocks. Second thing, one of the things we've always screened for when we look at the market and selecting individual securities has been sustainability of earnings and sales growth and consistency of earnings growth and sales growth. It's the number one thing we screen for in our quantitative process. Never has that been more important now. If the economy is going to grow at a fairly slow rate and corporate profits are only going to go up a certain amount, we want to make sure we're in companies where the expectations are fairly low and where the earnings and sales growth is sustainable, not 28% type growers, because you can't grow at 28% forever, but 10 to 12% consistent growers. And then finally, clean balance sheets. Another thing we've re-emphasized. We want to be in companies that have very little debt, have strong cash flow, and strong cash positions. This should sound familiar to those of you who have been here before. Why do we do that? Because those companies can invest in research and development that produces future sales and find new ways to use existing products that produce future sales. They can make strategic acquisitions and increase their market share. And most importantly, they weather economic storms and reward shareholders. They're much more likely to do that because they don't have to service a bunch of debt. They can pay dividends and they can grow their dividends. Does all this make sense? I like it when everybody, when a plan comes together. Okay, let's get to the magical things. Like I said, if you can't recognize this person, this is Merlin, a representation of Merlin, the magician, from King Arthur's court. And we're going to talk about some magical things. Some things that I think you can use when you're talking about your day-to-day portfolio management, looking at your own portfolio. Some things that you may not have thought of that are important, to me anyway. And the first one is the stability that we've talked about of our economic and political system in the United States. I showed you the chart where our markets always come back. So does our economy. And I think that's a magical thing. That's a grateful thing that we should be thankful for, because we live in an environment that lets people take risk and be entrepreneurial, and that has the political and economic stability that we can use as a backstop, if you will. That no matter what happens, we know the economy is going to come back, and that no matter what our political differences are, we know that eventually the politics will be taken out of things and what's best for our economy will be accomplished. And that our stock market will always come back. And that's magical. Who agrees with me? That's magical. That's important. There's no other country in the world like that. Magical things. Historical returns from the stock market. I said we'd get back to this. Here's a chart of return from the S&P 500 since 1924. The average return was 10.1% on average annually over all those years. The closest competition we have is from corporate bonds, and I think they're 5.5%. That beats gold, that beats the CPI, that beats everything. The return is significantly different enough that I don't care what your age is, you should probably have some money in the stock market, right? I mean, that's a significant difference in return between stocks and other financial assets and even hard assets. There's only a couple things that even compare with this. One of them is farm property, like our first speaker was talking about. This is a magical thing, something that you can rely on. that when you have periods like the fourth quarter, that's not a time to sell out of the market. That's an opportunity to buy in. Magical things. I mentioned last year very briefly, and some of the people that were our clients have heard me talk about this before. If there is a free lunch, and there's no such thing as a free lunch, but if there's something close to it in the investment side, it's in these quality stocks. And we define quality stocks are ones that have those sustainable earnings and sales growth, very consistent, that have clean balance sheets, that have high return on equity from positive sources, that have corporate managements that are good corporate citizens. All of those things, that pay dividends and grow the dividends, all of those things make up quality stocks. If you'll notice, quality stocks are kind of the, what is that, reddish, purplish color. You don't have to look at the numbers and you don't have to look at anything else. But quality stocks are never in the bottom half of the return spectrum compared to growth stocks and value stocks and large cap stocks and momentum stocks and all the other ways that people invest money. As a result of that, they're the number one performer over long periods of time. And it's the main reason that for 24 years, 25 years I'll have been at the bank this fall, we have tried to concentrate our efforts in companies that have quality characteristics because in the long run they outperform. And I think that's something magical. Not just that our stock market does well, but that quality stocks generally do better over longer periods of time than non-quality stocks. Another magical thing. What if I told you that I had a game of chance? And if you stayed in this game of chance for an entire year, there was a 74% chance that you would get a positive outcome. What if I said furthermore that if you stayed in this game of chance consistently for 5 years, that probability goes up to 85%. And if I told you if you were in it for 15 years, your probability of a positive outcome is 100%. What if I told you that that game of chance was the U.S. stock market? We're looking at returns going back to 1924 in 15-year increments, so 24 to 39, 25 to 40, 26 to 41, and so on. There hasn't been a single period where we've had a negative return, and you've consistently been in the stock market for that 15-year period of time. Think this is magical? I certainly do. And who here has a 15-year time horizon? I asked that last year, and a few people raised their hand. Hell, I'm even older now than I was then, and I've got a 15-year time horizon. Magic. Now I'm going to tell you the magical thing that relates to all the other magical things we talked about, and that's the power of compounding. We're looking at an actual company in our core portfolio that I have changed the name of to XYZ Corporation to protect the innocent, and so I don't jinx that particular stock over the next year. It's a real company, and they've had a compound annual growth in their dividend of about 18% over the last 10 years. This is a company that is one of those very, very high quality companies that has sustainable earnings growth in that 9 to 10% range, that pays out 40% of their earnings in the form of dividends, and that currently has a dividend yield of 3%. If you were to buy this company today, I left the price off because I didn't want anybody guessing what the stock was, even from our own group. If you were to buy that stock today, your yield on your cost would be 3%. What if, let's assume, all of this remains the same, and they continue to grow their earnings at 10% and continue to pay 40% out for the next 5 years? What's your yield on your cost? Well, first of all, you started out at 3%, which is better than the yield on a 10-year treasury. The yield on the cost 5 years in the future is almost 5%. Let's say that you're a real long-term investor and all of this stuff remains the same, and you hold it for 10 years. Your yield on your cost would be 7.8%. Let's take the example of someone who has a very long time horizon and buys the stock, and everything remains the same for 20 years. your yield on your cost on an annualized basis, based on the dividend alone, would be 20%. Now, who here wouldn't make this bet? Buy this stock and hold it for 20 years so that every year after the 20th year, the return that you got from the income it sent to you was 20% or more. The power of compounding is the real magic behind a lot of what we do. And the second part of the magic is the part that our investment team does, trying to determine if this set of circumstances is going to be good for a long period of time. We're the ones that read those SEC filings. We're the ones that do all that in-depth analysis to try to determine if this is something that's sustainable and if this is something that 20 years in the future, we can look back on and say, wow, what a great return on your income. Make sense? The real magic is the power of compounding. I want to thank everyone for being here today. It does me a great deal of good to look in the audience and see so many faces that I know and who are friends. We've been doing this for 24 straight years, and we want to tell you that a lot of people in the audience are customers, a lot of people in the audience are shareholders. We cannot tell you how much your support has meant to Kathy and I over the last 24 years, 25 years, almost 30 for Kathy. I should have said that, should I?
No, you shut up.